Logan, Chris is looking for who you're excited to see this spring and on into the fall in 23.
Most excited to see. So this can be any player, no matter what rank, starter, whichever. Who I'm most excited for, I'm probably going to go with Jaheim Bell with the mixture of how Mike Norvell is going to use him. I think that's something that all of us, once we get to practices, once I see James, once he gets back over here in the 850, and we're watching practices, seeing how he's going to utilize Bell, kind of like I was bringing up earlier, because they're going to have I really like this tight end room now. I haven't been able to say that in a while, where I'm excited to talk about a Florida State tight end room now with Kyle Morlock, Marquiston Douglas, and Jaheim Bell in there. And you've got some younger guys also like Brian Courtney. Like, there's a lot to like in this room. And then also a redshirt freshman, Jarrell Powers, who I was talking about last night with you, Mark. A true freshman this last year will be a redshirt freshman, has the size, looks the part. I was making some big time moves there, and during the bowl game practices, I liked seeing the improvement there from him. So I like Jaheim Bell here, and probably the person that I'm most excited for. Last year, this was Jared Verse. He was the number one. I was, really stoked to see him and see him battle against Florida State's offensive line, Alex Atkins. But this time I'm going offensive player, and it's going to be Jaheim Bell. And there's a reason why he ended up picking Florida State. There's a reason why he picked Mike Norvell. There's a reason why he picked their offense to play for to end off his career. That's a special athlete, a lot of capabilities, a lot of different ways you can use them. I'm just really key on like where are you putting them at? That's a thing. You can put them outside, you can put them in the slot, you can put them on the line, you can put them in the backfield. That's just what Bell brings to your offense. So that should excite anybody that likes watching football, college football, or definitely if you're an FSU fan. Jaheim Bell is probably my player that excites me the most going into this spring camp.
Chris, before I answer your question, because I think you're just trying to get me to nail that prediction so you can win some money. I'm going to go back to James. I'm going to go back to James, and also because I want to extend on this second question for Logan, because Logan, you pretty much covered what I'm going to ask. But if you want to throw another guy out there too, James, who's on the roster that really hasn't done anything yet, who hasn't really produced on the field, but you think could take off?
Oh, wow. That's a loaded question. That's one of those questions that if somebody watches it, hey, man, you think I ain't doing nothing?
I know, right? That's the thing.
I don't go sit in the baseball stands and watch these practices, Mark. I'm really up close. I'm up close personal with these guys, man.
But I mean, if they're got the ball and they're catching and they see you, maybe we just go fall down right in your legs there and snap.
Yeah, like I'm over there on the
sideline. Positive way, they're gonna.
I'm on the sideline. They're not gonna pull up when they're running out of bounds now.
That doesn't necessarily mean that they were bad last year.
They
didn't get an opportunity.
I think Turner, at defensive end, Turner from out of St. Aug, really good defensive. Got the size, got the attributes there. Just trying to find a way to fit in. If I were trying to light a fire under somebody, I would say, number 9. He knows who he is. And, you've done something, but you ain't done nothing at the same time. Like, it's the reason why everybody's talking about Patrick Payton and they're talking about Jared Verse. Derek got to come in and, make people know who you are. I think that's where you get back to that Florida State. The Florida State that I grew up watching, when you had guys like Raynard Wilson. I just saw he had a great space the other day. I can't think of it. He was the highest drafted player in Florida State history, defensive end. Andre Wadsworth.
Oh, yeah.
Peter Boulware. You had like 5 or 6 cats. You had Corey. Like, I always remind people that Senator Corey Simon was a backup when he was a consensus All-American. That's how deep they were at Florida State during those times. So you got to do that. I would say he got that Old Testament Azariah Thomas. Kid, they like to pout a little bit as freshmen, but you ain't did shit. You're a freshman. Go make some plays, go do something, then force the hand. Offensively, I would go and say there's the most talented player in the wide receiver core. FSU's fans, probably their only way of really knowing who he is is seeing him get into it with Mike Norvell, and that's transfer Deuce Spann, and he's a tall, big wide receiver. That's a legit 4-3 kid. I think if he's, and then when you see like Malik McClain, if I remember correctly, that's the one who just left. You come in and you see him possibly taking on his role. You can see him really elevate this offense by giving us a guy, what they call cut the head off the top of the defense. Like really force those safeties to be honest, have to stay in your zone coverage. Because if you play man with a kid like this, he's going to torch you. He's going to put somebody in a bad spot.
Yep.
So that would be the only, because everybody else on offense, I mean, I can say Biscuit, but I think in Douglas, but I mean, I think I like him. I think fans are going to fall in love with him. I actually think, Jaheim Bell is going to come in and leave the impact that he's going to leave. But I think everybody's thinking Murlock is going to come in and just be a out of sight automatic starter. And I think Biscuit's going to hold down his starting job a little bit better than what people are. And I don't say they're not disrespecting him on purpose. I just think fans don't know any better. Every kid that transfers from Florida State is a quitter. Every kid that transfers into Florida State is the greatest person to ever play the game. Like, how could the other school allow this kid to leave? But the beautiful thing that we haven't had in quite some time, and with Mike Norvell, I hope he doesn't do it now. Maybe when they change the rules for transfer portal, or when he retires, he'll be able to write a book on how to build your team in the portal. Because the one thing that they have now is talent across the board, and what they look like they're recruiting is going to make them not have to rely as heavy on the portal and just get 2 or 3 of the best guys in the portal while they're getting some of the best high school seniors. It should be a fun spring. I can't wait. I'm going to figure out how I'm going to get to Tallahassee on March 6th for the first practice, because I'll be basically leaving Indianapolis to come right to Tallahassee. So, but I'm hoping I'll put the same tweet that I put out last year, that this is the best first day of spring that I've seen, and everybody, and it'll go viral, and everybody will be like, yeah, eat it up.
Yeah, I like those. I like those picks. The Byron Turner one is spot on. We saw a lot of improvement from him in the middle of the season all the way to the end. And if he puts on a little bit of size, that's going to be a huge factor for him. And then, like you said, I like Marquise. And one thing about him, the difference between him and Cam McDonald, reliability. He caught the ball. I think a lot of things we forgot. Marquise and Douglas can catch the ball and he can run with it. It's not as slim as maybe Cam McDonald was, but he can catch the ball, and if he's reliable, that's what a quarterback wants. And so if Marquise, and I don't think Marquison's going to be stepping down and let anybody take a spot whatsoever. I don't think that's going to be the game plan. I think Florida State's going to try to utilize all 3 of them as much as possible, but Florida State should have a fun spring camp, at least definitely offensively, because that was some of the going into the spring. The offense was there was a lot of question marks because you were bringing in these wide receivers that just transferred over, and you're going to try to see what you're going to get out of a guy like Deuce Spann. We were wondering, what was going on with Winston Wright Jr., Micah Pittman. We just thought Johnny Wilson was really tall, and you're just going to throw it to him in the end zone. That was it. But hell no, that's not the case. You can throw it to him anywhere across the field. So I think there's going to be major question marks on Winston Wright Jr., the availability for him. And like you were bringing up, James, Deuce Spann, can he be utilized in any way, shape, or form outside of, I want to see him used in special teams. There was a question on here talking about who's going to be returning kicks this year. I want to see Deuce Spann back there because we get to see him in practice. He's one of the returners. He doesn't get a lot of starting time back there, but he has the speed, like James said, the size. We get to see him up close. He's got all those crazy athletic attributes. It's just taking a little bit more extra coaching because he's gone from a quarterback position over to the wide receiver room. And, you see that he wants to be coached. And you saw the thing that went viral this year where Coach Norvell was going off on him for a little bit and then sat with him for a second. And then he ends up being on the field the next play and makes a grab. Like, that's just kind of how Mike Norvell is going to work things no matter what. And I think it works perfectly for a guy like Deuce Spann, who's just taking a little bit longer to get under the system, understand where he needs to be and routes and building chemistry with his quarterbacks. So I would like to see Deuce Spann make that next jump because he made a big one in that fall camp. And I think we all were expecting to see more out of him this last year, but that wide receiver room was ridiculously stacked ridiculously stacked. And Ontario Wilson held on to his own as a veteran and didn't allow any of these transfers to come in here and take his place. So we'll see. Deuce Spann, Winston Wright Jr. Will Deuce make that next step? And will we see Winston Wright Jr. play a football game in 2023 is probably one of the big question marks on offense for me right now.
8 catches for Deuce last year at Florida State. Winston Wright, 63 for West Virginia. Obviously, we expected a lot out of him, and unfortunately, now he's battling his way back, but seems to be in really good shape. James, before I answer Chris's question, did you pout as a freshman?
No. It was a lot different. I was raised way differently than a lot of people. My mom didn't even know I was good in football until they tried to, like, my freshman year, they tried to, in high school, I got an F. I passed, but I got an F in, I think, earth science or something like that. So I passed with a C. And my mom was like, "You're not playing any sports." And the coaches had to beg her to let me play. And she was like, I know they say his name a lot. I don't know if that's good or bad, but I tried to, like, complain to my grandmother, and my grandmother isn't one of those good church Southern grandmothers. She's very tough, hard nosed, and she'll tell me to stop being a punk, be tough, stop crying about it, go out there and do something to make people want to play you. And that was the mentality that I took in there. And as a guy who actually, even though I was offered and I didn't make the grades, I walked on. So there was no room for me to cry and pout. If I cried and pout, I was going back to Rockbrook, 1033 apartment C. And in my mind, I said, I am not going back to that apartment. There's no way in hell I'm going back to that. So it's funny because Coach Bowden, I was going through my phone and I saw an interview with Coach Bowden, and Coach Bowden was like, I don't ever remember James complaining. He just went out there and did what he had to do. He also said I wasn't no sissy either, so which I thought was hilarious. But yeah, man, it was but I saw people pout. I saw and he ended up working out for him. Thomas Clayton was a 4-star running back for Virginia, but he came in with Lorenzo Booker, who's the number 1 prospect in the nation. Leon Washington, the number 1 athlete in the nation. Thomas Clayton, I had Torrance Washington, who was a freshman in front of me. So it was 5 guys that were brought in there, and it was like who's gonna play. And Tom ended up leaving to go to Kansas State, ended up being drafted. I believe he played with the 49ers for a few years. And I seen guys like Fred Rouse pout. I seen it happen, but when you're on when you're on a team where it's a bunch of alpha males and dogs, like that crying stuff doesn't fly. But good camaraderie and brotherhood will come up and tell you, hey man, stop crying. Come on, let's pull this together. And I think they're getting that now, but I think it's still they got to get some guys still can't buy into that. So they had to leave and do what was best for them, and congrats to those guys.
I figured you being you and you not being a 4-star coming in and having to work for everything you got, that you weren't pouting. I just wanted to hear what you were going to say.
Yeah, my mama wasn't playing that. Should have probably spanked me.